Okay, ready when you are.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie, and I'm calling to order this regular meeting of this Tonganoxie City Council for October 17th, 2022. Ms. Huntington, could you call the roll, please, and note that I am present?
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Partridge?
Here.
Ms. McCutcheon?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Donnelly?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First up is the approval of minutes for the meeting dated October 3rd, 2022. Are there any questions or concerns or conversations about the minutes? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve is presented.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Donnelly.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 3, consent agenda, which is when we review the bill payments from the previous cycle. If there are any questions or conversation or concerns about the bill payments. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I
So-
will motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 4, old business. This is also the time when we allow the public to come forward with any concerns they might have for a short amount of time. Mr. Porter, did anyone sign up before the deadline?
No signups, Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to item 5, new business. Consider acceptance of public dedications and final plat for Timber Lakes. Mr. Brakovich.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So this item is a matter of routine business, but I wanted to go through a bit of a history with the project. And Les Hamilton with BHC, who served as the project engineer on this, is here tonight as well, should you have any questions. This is a project we started discussing with the then potential developer in February of this year. It was looking at the approximate 8 acres that remained undeveloped near the Timber Hills subdivision. This project proposes the construction of 29 new single-family lots in that area and serviced by a looped road that would just be stubbed off where the current road ends. The item came before Planning Commission for both preliminary and final plat. Final plat was just heard in October here. We don't have any concerns from the staff level. The action before you as a city council tonight is you accept any easements or public dedications that need to be recorded on that. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council, do you have any questions?
Just a couple, George, obviously we've addressed the water and we're working on that. And will that all be done before construction and all, or how does that work out?
Yes, so Mr. Heskett, our Public Works Director, met with our city engineers near the site to start preliminary design work on exactly where along Smiley Road we would locate that. We expect that project will be handled in-house with our crews early in '23, so we'll be kind of keeping pace with the civil work they're doing on the site. It'll be, I would assume, well in advance of any home construction occurring.
That'd be great. I just recalled a lot of people coming in and talking to us about it.
Yes.
Sorry not to come back. And the second question, I didn't see it in the engineering report. Is that lift station, is that sized for the additional 29? I mean, we're gonna put more water in, so is that lift station that's handling all that sized? And I didn't see it, so I assume it's sized appropriately.
Yes, if it wasn't addressed in BG's comments, I don't believe it's an issue for this project.
Okay.
I know we looked at some additional stormwater language. And I know that I should have mentioned the developer, after seeing a few of the residents show at a planning commission meeting, not necessarily in opposition of the project. They just received their notice and they were curious. He's held at least one additional meeting just with the developer and the homeowners association to talk through any other additional questions they might have. So what we like to see, hiring professionals to help them with their civil work, being engaged with the community in advance. Those are good qualities.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to accept the public dedications in the final plat for Timber Lakes as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up is the city manager agenda, where we'll look at the September financial report. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. The financial report is provided at the dais for the council, and it's included on the city website agenda packet materials as well. I won't belabor every page of the report tonight. We've made it 9 months through the fiscal year, and we're excited to be 75% complete. We do have a good standing with about 87% of revenue collections opposed to budget estimates, and we've only spent about 69% of our expenditure authority across all city funds. We'll go through in a little more detail several items, but at the very conclusion of the report is a required quarterly treasurer's report. And so that's signed by the city treasurer, Joanne Ferguson, and myself, and it's published in the newspaper according to state statute requirements. So we'll get to that at the very end, but I just wanted to point out that this is one of 4 times a year that we do require that preparation and publication. And that's going to be complete publication probably next week based on our publication cycles. We've completed 4 budget amendments in 2022, the most recent one for the water, sewer, and capital projects fund, last meeting actually. And I won't go into that detail, but if you have any questions, please let me know. Page 2 of the report and page 3 illustrate in charts what we are looking at in terms of major fund revenues, major fund expenditures compared to the prior year and compared to budget. We also look at the utility funds and other capital funds, again on page 3 of the report. Page 4 of the report illustrates the city's position with sales tax. If you remember in our last monthly report, we were a day late getting the August expected remittance of sales tax proceeds. We got those September 1st, and then we collected our normal September remittance the end of September. So we're finally back up to date with the 8th and 9th monthly remittances. We have 3 remaining months, and just to give you an idea of the trends you can see illustrated on the charts at the bottom of that page, for city sales tax, we're about 15% ahead of last year's pace through 9 months. And in use tax, compensating use tax, we're 48% ahead of last year's pace. Last year's pace was substantially ahead of budget and ahead of prior years. So this is truly different than our expectations and that we've seen in any historical months. When we received the last remittance report, George and I actually conferred and looked over the numbers. And what's somewhat comforting is that we're not the only community that saw changes. Statewide, there have been several news articles and reports of counties or cities reporting record compensating use and sales tax collections. Some of that is driven by inflation as everything costs more. Therefore, the same amount of purchases of goods equal more sales tax if it was more expensive to the purchaser. So some amount can be construed to be due to inflation that we've heard of and seen, experienced ourselves. But this is a trend that we're seeing continue now for about 2.5 years of really strong performance of sales and compensating use. And it's something that we'll have to look at as we look at future budget years a little more closely to see, are we being too conservative in those projections?
Are you able to identify, do they segment that sales tax? Or does it just come in one giant pile and it's not segmented at all between clothes and food and
we can analyze it and download metadata or data with metadata tags that kind of show that NAICS codes, I think they're called, and do some surveying of it ourselves. The hard part is everyone remits on their own preference of a schedule, quarterly, biannually, annually, whenever the IRS or the Kansas Revenue Department tracks them down. And so we see spikes and peaks and valleys all the time from individual vendors that reflect that kind of scattered approach. So when we look at it holistically, that's a lot of data to aggregate. So we've done those to an extent, but we don't do it like every month because of just the level of effort is a little tough to
Is there a
identify.
correlation, can you correlate that across like building permits? Because a lot of that, I mean, the construction cost, a lot of that sales tax is coming out of lumber and.
Yes.
And those houses, there's a lot of houses up there in Jackson Heights that went on about that time and that rolled through.
Yeah, McRae Lumber, for example, is a common provider of delivered materials, and so we see pretty significant compensating use tax for them in particular, and other lumber providers, Menards, that, we do see that, especially with delivery now, the preferred method of site delivery, basically, instead of going to a developer or a construction firm's home base and then being taken to a building site.
I'd be anxious to look at that data. Is that, can I have access to it?
I don't know if we can get you access, but we could
That's fine.
provide some summary analysis to try to share. That would be,
Be fascinating to who is, because it's improved, and I think a lot of it's because of Amazon's now sending us the tax versus somebody else. So-
yeah.
so, good.
Yeah, the number of vendors exponentially grew that pay compensating use tax in the city now compared to just a couple years ago.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Probably largely our Amazon purchases.
Jake's house is on the report. I don't remember where, but
I can imagine that would be a huge amount of work, even when we don't download our own Amazon purchase list
Yeah.
for taxes. There's so many codes, and we personally ordered it. It's really, really a time-consuming effort to extrapolate that. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a huge ask. But
The data's available.
yeah, I mean, just
available.
in terms of identifying what categories it would even fall in, just from my experience. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I agree.
It is quite a bit of work. Typically, what we've tried to do in the past is give you some indication of like who our top 5 retail sales tax producers are. Maybe we
Yeah,
can do the
that's
same on
that's always been
compensating
helpful.
use. Just kind of those top tier and what does that reflect
Yeah.
for activity in the community.
Yeah, that's always
that,
helpful to
yeah.
hear.
All right, so the next page of the report is a new addition. It starts with a heading of Infrastructure Sales Tax 6-Year Summary. What we tried to do here was illustrate some recent analysis that we completed of what was the track record and next, in combination with next year's budget, of the proceeds and the utilization of the proceeds of the 3/4 cent sales tax last approved by the voters in 2017. And so the pie graph at the top of the page illustrates that about 57% of the expenditures of that to date, and including next year's budget, are towards the library debt service. That's about $265,000 a year. And again, that is the majority share, but it's not an overwhelming amount. It's actually less. When we first initiated the construction of the library, we thought it would be close to 65 or 70% of our total collections that would go towards that debt. So because the revenue has grown faster than we thought, like we just talked about on the last page of the report, we have had the opportunity to fund other projects and initiatives. The next biggest use of those funds is street maintenance at just under, actually right on 39% of the funding spent to date. That amount is actually illustrated in the chart at the bottom of the page, where you can see 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. That number is reflected on that chart as a percentage of total street maintenance funding paid for by the city. So the contracted services and the commodities we purchase to patch potholes, to redo streets, to preserve streets and curbs. So you can see it's a little less than half from 2018 to 2020 of our funding came from infrastructure sales tax. It took a little bit of a dip in 2021. Part of that was due to the growth of other revenues for street maintenance, like excise tax for large developments in particular that took green space and converted it into a development. They paid an excise tax that was more than a normal year. 2022 budget, we're back close to 50%, and then in 2023, again, we're a little lower at 36%. But what's intended to be conveyed here is the tremendous boost that infrastructure sales tax has made on street maintenance activities and the potential of the city to fund almost half again as much infrastructure work on streets and curbs as would have been possible without that sales tax. We've also got a small sliver, about 4% of the funds that have been used on major projects at the water park. You might remember the resurfacing of underwater surfaces, and then this year in the spring, the replacement of the powder coating and paint on all the elevated surfaces that had started to age and show their wear and tear of the elements and the demands placed on those. So we've balanced where the funds have been invested, but the good news is there's a broad scope of infrastructure and capital needs that can be addressed with this funding in the future. So point number one was just that sales tax is coming in ahead of expectations the last year and a half or two. And point number two on this page was to illustrate what we've spent infrastructure sales tax dollars on over a 6-year history, basically. Are there any questions about this? Okay. So moving to the next page of the report, a summary of general fund expenditures and major commodities cost trends. I won't belabor that because on the page after that, major construction project detail view. This includes a summary of the water tower construction project. So it's a significant project with a total budget of just under $3.3 million. The city issued temp notes to handle the cash flow, basically, to pay the project. And then we are due a little under $1.5 million in grant funds from the EDA on the construction contract cost of the project. What the tracker is designed to illustrate is how many pay-apps have been received, how many have been paid, which in this case, pay-app 1 has been paid and pay-app 2 has been received but not yet paid. When you look at the percent of the project or contract cost complete through 2 pay-apps, we're at about 27% completion of that $3.3 million. We've only paid 9% of the cost because we've only, again, paid the first just about $305,000 towards the project. What's also illustrated in the subsequent 2 pages is site pictures from BG Consultants, who's doing the construction observation. Site pictures that they provide along with documentation that supports making payment for those pay-apps as they're received and processed on a monthly basis. Interesting to see kind of close-up pictures, sometimes with activity going on. So you'll see the headings include beginning drilling operations for the drilled shafts, delivering rebar cages, and cleaning out the hole, which I thought was a particularly elaborate word choice for those activities. This is an item we'll try to conclude since we expect the project to come to completion at least by next May in the following monthly financial reports as a recurring item, especially if you have interest or if you have any questions too, we're happy to make modifications to share this. The final 2 pages of the standard report for each month include 2022 budget initiatives. We have no major initiatives outstanding at this point in the year that are either not already underway or significantly underway. And then next year's budget timeline, we've obviously completed budget adoption, and we simply have the budget book to be completed and published. You'll each get a printed copy, and we'll share notice as soon as we get the book finished and published, hopefully by this time next month. Fund balance report is included for your review. Expenditure budget of actuals to expenditure authority. And then, as I mentioned, the very last page of the report, the treasurer's report, we did make significant changes from last quarter in completing the fall debt service payments. So we paid a little more than 1.2 million of our debt obligations, and you can see that reflected in the grand total of outstanding debt obligations for the city being a little under 12.5 million. So no other significant items to report. Happy to take any questions you might have, though.
Council, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, is that,
That's all the report.
all
Thanks,
right,
Mayor.
thank you very much. Anything further with the city manager agenda?
No other items tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. City attorney agenda, is Ms. Kirstowicz on the phone?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor. This is Anna Kirstowicz. I do not have any items.
All right, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem agenda, do you have any items?
I do not have any items.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have any items to discuss? I have none either, so I will cede the rest of my time to Mr. Dale.
With that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, oh, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Aye.